So, I was requested to make a Ryuga versus Mikoto analysis, so here it is. Hope I did it justice. Now let's get right into it. Now, as you all know, in life there are sometimes two sides to someone's lives. Someone who's been accepted despite their faults, and someone who's been abandoned for their faults. For these two, the symbolism is actually quite stark, as Mikoto, an idol who's supposed to be perfect, has given herself up and has shown to her fans that she's not perfect, but they still love her. While Ryuga, also having to be perfect in order to please his parents and his family name, was ostracized for that perfection. And when he finally made a friend called Kaito and needed to protect him, that protectiveness actually made Kaito scared of him. The fact that Ryuga wasn't the perfect person that Kaito thought he was made him feel scared. That mixed up with a whole messed up shebang at his home life led him to becoming one of the most depressing characters to ever grace Cardfight Vanguard. In this fight, I'm going to explain exactly what happened during their fight, and I honestly feel bad for Ryuga. I can understand his motives, his everything, and if you want to watch it, go watch episode 4 of Cardfight Vanguard Divinez, Parallactic Clash. It's a pretty tragic story actually. But without further ado, let's get to the analysis. Turn 1 starts. The fight starts and Ryuga writes Drag Ritter Reki, while Makoto writes Wonder Lavender Yershul. Ryuga goes first. Discarding a Crimson Mood, he writes Gerbiter. He doesn't have anything to use this turn, so no faults there. But could he have discarded something else and used his Crimson Moon here? Honestly, he could have, but it's also okay to discard his Crimson Moon early. There's a possibility that a lot of the cards in his hands were also either a trigger that he wanted to use for defense or combo cards that he wanted. And sometimes it's less risky to just discard the cards you're going to bind anyways, so no faults there. But he's now got 1 Crimson Moonlight in the drop. If you're familiar with the Phantom Vanguards, you know that you need to bind either 1 or multiple Crimson Moons in order to activate their most powerful skill, the Phantom skill. And the Phantom skill effect gets usually more powerful the more you have to bind at a time. So let's see what Alpharad's skill is, I wonder. Because Makoto definitely didn't know. But anyways, turn 2. It's Makoto's turn, and she writes Tifane. She draws a card from the Grade 0's ability, and she attacks. Ryuga no guards, and Mikoto doesn't get a trigger. The attack hits, giving Ryuga 1 damage. She hits Drag Ritter Latifa. She ends her turn. Now, only with foresight do we know this, but against Ryuga, with the deck he's running, just rush him to Kingdom Come. It's only dangerous once he gets going. Like, as in, not when he gets to his grade 3, because that's still pretty weak. I mean, like, when he activates the Phantom skill, that's when the game might be over. Like, I would highly recommend just rushing this type of deck. Just throw everything, the kitchen sink, every grade 1, everything at him. Because he truly has no good defense in this deck. Not a lot of drawing, not a lot of defense, just attack, attack, attack. But because Mikoto didn't know anything about this deck, it's actually pretty normal to play safe like this. Like, usually you don't call too much, just in case that these types of Dragon Empire decks usually have a lot of retiring effects, or something like his opponent needs more units on the board in order to activate more effects. It's much safer to just play safe for now. Usually, if you're not sure what your opponent card does in real life, you usually just ask them, just ask them what it does. You're like a normal person. But this is anime, baby! You can never ask what your opponent's card does. What are you, a normal human being? Anyways, turn 3. Ryuga discards a Drag Ritter Habitable Zone and writes Blajet. With the skill of the grade 1 he just wrote upon, he can add a Crimson Moonlight to his hand. And with the effect of the discarded Drag Ritter Habitable Zone, he can either Energy Blast 3, also blast, and I'm just going to assume he Energy Blasted 3, and he can add another Crimson Moonlight to his hand. Meaning he has 2 Crimson Moonlights in his hand. He's now got 3 Crimson Moonlights either in his hand or in his drop. One's in the drop naturally, I just wanted to point it out. He uses 1 Crimson Moonlight and calls Gamma Rays from the top 5 cards in his deck. He then attacks with Blajet. Mikoto no guards. He actually gets a draw trigger here. I know the anime doesn't show it. I know that you guys don't believe me yet, but please just play along, otherwise later his hand size literally makes no sense. But I promise you, I'm not tripping. But it also doesn't make sense why he didn't give the 10,000 to Gamma Rays, but I'm just going to assume it's a fault of the script writer. Anyways, she takes the first damage of the fight, a morning practice in the calm sea Tolmana. Why is that such a long name? Anyways, he then attacks with Gamma Rays, and she guards with a calm 5000 shield emphatic lime Armel. Makoto is saving most of her hand here, and she's actually still got 6 cards in her hands, and she's going second. Should she have guarded this early? Honestly, it's fine. You're about to see in a second, but honestly, guarding here would have actually cost her the fight later on. She wouldn't have had enough guard to block Alpharad's attack later. And about the draw trigger that Ryuga got and didn't use to boost the gamma rays, I think it really is a Vanguard script problem. And don't worry, I'll explain why he definitely had a draw trigger later. Just bear with me, please. It's turn 4. It's Makoto's turn, and she draws. She's now at 7 cards in her hand. She discards a random card, writing Musette. With the effect of Tefane, she can call out a Yuika from the top card of her deck to the bottom left. Now, listen, if you're a Chris Rain player, you know for a fact this is BS. I would have either called a heal trigger or my OT from the top of my deck. This is not real life. This is not accurate. Anyways, she then calls Francette and Armel. Using Armel, she attacks Gamma Rays, getting rid of his rear guard, to which he doesn't guard. Then, using Musette, she attacks the Vanguard, to which he guards with a heal trigger. He's now used 1 out of 16 triggers in his deck. She drive checks, hitting a critical trigger. She gives the power and critical to her not yet attacked Francette, who is not only being boosted by that critical, but a Yuika. This attack combined is 28,000, and with Ryuga's Vanguard only having 10,000, he'd have to use 2 triggers to block this attack. Nobody would spend that type of resources to do something like that. And plus he's at 1 damage, he's only going to take 3. So Ryuga takes 2 damage and hits a Drag Ritter, Habitable Zone, and a critical trigger. Wow, that's unlucky. Ryuga's now at 3 damage, and Mikoto's at 1. I don't actually see any misplays from Mikoto here. In fact, her play like this is perfect. Ryuga's deck, like I said, doesn't have a lot of drawing or defense, so her rushing is perfect. Was it truly perfect though? We later see in the fight that she could have actually called way more from her hand, making this rush even more deadly. He would have had to use more and more cards in order to guard this next attack. And if that critical trigger had gone through with her Vanguard, that means he might have been at 4 by now. So honestly, it could have been more deadly. Now, the show doesn't show this, but I believe she used Yuika to actually return Armel or Francette to her hand, then used Francette's skill to return another card to her hand. Meaning the only card left on the field is Yuika, which is insane because that means she's got her whole hand back. Anyways, the first grade 3 comes to the field. Turn 5, and it's Alpharad Phantom. When you ride Alpharad on top of Blyjet, you can put the top card of your deck into the damage zone face down. Then, with a Crimson Moonlight, he calls a Drag Ritter Latifa, and with her effect, you can Soul Blast 1 and call out any card with a grade less than the Vanguard from the top 5 cards in your deck. He calls out Orlando. He then calls out a second Gamma Rays, and he's at 5 cards in his hand. Now let me explain why he must have had a draw trigger or something in the last couple of turns. You see, we know from turn 4 just now that he had to use 1 card to guard his heal trigger, and he just called 2 cards from his hand. That means somehow, some way, I'm not sure how, he managed to have 8 cards in his hand on turn 2. Now, unless my math is wrong in some damn way, how on earth did he have this many cards in his hand? That's why I said he must have drawn a draw trigger, because if you add the 2 Crimson Moonlights he had in his hand that were added, he'd be at 7 cards. Then he uses 1, he's down to 6 cards in his hand. But if you add in the fact he got a draw trigger, then he'd be at 8, which perfectly makes sense for why his hand's now at 5. I'm not sure why he didn't give the 10,000 to Gamma Rays, but I'm not gonna lie, I think the script writers just kinda forgot it. I'm not gonna lie, I think it's a script problem. He then activates Alpharad Phantom's skill, gaining 3,000 for each card in the damage zone. So he has 12,000 power increase. On top of that, he retires Yuika. Now, he attacks with Gamma Rays, first on her Vanguard. Gamma Rays gets 5,000 power if you have Alpharad as the Vanguard, and it's got no other boosted, so this attack is only at 15,000 power. Makoto guards this with a draw trigger, the shield is 20k. He then attacks with Latifa, boosted by Orlando. Combining these two, the attack is 18,000 power, to which she guards with a critical trigger. Pretty pricey, I'm not gonna lie, but I guess if you consider what's gonna happen next, it's a good choice. He then attacks with the most powerful attack he's got this turn. With its own effect, it's at a whopping 25,000 power. Okay, it's not actually that strong, I'm not gonna lie. Wow, this deck, Okay, wow, it sucks. With the Gamma Rays in his front row, its effect activates, and with a Counterblast, you can draw a card and restand itself. It got no power-ups from this effect. Yeah, wow, okay, this deck sucks. Anyways, Mikoto no-guards the Alpharad attack. He reveals a perfect guard and a draw trigger. He gives Gamma Rays the extra 10,000 power, and Mikoto takes her second damage of the game, a perfect guard. He then attacks with Gamma Rays at a whopping 25,000 power. Man, this deck sucks! She no guards, and she's at 3 damage. Then, the effect of Blajet activates, letting him return any of the cards in his drop zone into his hand. Now in his hand, we know he's got a PG, that's huge, but we also know he has a draw trigger. Now everything depends on that definitely unknown card he added back to his hand. I wonder what card he could add that would definitely help to guard against a fully powered Chris Rain turn. Oh man, I wonder. Maybe, I don't know. Oh yeah, no. Turn 6. It's Makoto's turn, and she draws. She discards a card and rides Chris Rain, Cadenza, and holy, looking respectfully, with the discarded Divinez message from her drop, she can look at the top 5 and add a Chris Rain to her hand. I just like to point out to everyone to know that Mikoto got slimed and nerfed by this message. Anyways, with the effect of the grade 2 she rode upon, she can now look at the top card of her deck, and she calls Alpharad. Once again, how did she not grab her over trigger from the top? What is this? This is not accurate real life Chris Rain. She then calls Armel, Francette, and Rochelle from her hand. It doesn't say in the anime, but Armel's skill lets her soul charge and then CB to draw another card, and then it gives this card 5,000 power, which I can only assume she did, then choosing a unit and giving it another 5,000 power. Once again, I don't know which one, cause it doesn't show, but it also has a second effect, letting her Energy Blast 3 if you control a Chris Rain and call a grade 1 from the drop. Why didn't she use it? You see, I'm not sure, maybe she just can't read. Anyways, Chris Rain's skill activates with a Counterblast, and because she has 5 units, she can use all of their skills. Once again though, I think she blundered here though. She went second and didn't use a single energy charge, meaning she's at 9 right now. I really hope, at least in this fight, if they didn't show it, that she did Energy Blast 7 and drew an extra card, because the energy counter doesn't go above 10. And if she could, then she could have gotten an extra card for pretty much free, because for the rest of this turn, she only uses 3 energy from this Chris Rain skill. She energy charges 3, she draws a card, she gives Francette 15,000 power, Chris Rain gets a critical, and she chooses Alpharad that at the end of her turn, it gets put into her hand. She then calls the card she just drew, her blue-haired prodigy, Ryuga. And let me just say, in no dimension is that blue. Once again, the anime doesn't show or specify, but because she gave Francette the 15,000 power, Francette's skill gives Chris Rain another 10,000 power. Then, with the Ryuga, she gives Chris Rain another 10,000 power. So right now, if my math is correct, Chris Rain's at 33,000 power. She attacks with Armel, boosted by Alpharad. This attack with everything is a far cry, a whopping 25,000. Wow, these two have weak attacks so far. Or maybe not. And then she attacks with Francette, boosted by Rochelle. With the effect of all of them, this attack is at a 38,000. Holy, let's go, Chris Rain! Combining these two attacks, both of the times, Ryuga did not guard, meaning he's at 5 damage now. She then attacks with a Chris Rain Cadenza. Now, once again, I have no clue how strong this Vanguard is, because it doesn't show, but with everything I've calculated, this should be at 33,000 power, because of Ryuga and Francette, and maybe 38k if she activated Armel's skill, which once again, I have no clue if she did. Wait, what do you mean she's at 48k? How? Now, with Rochelle's skill, she Energy Blast 3. Please, Makoto, tell me you actually Energy Blasted 7 to get another card in your hand. Please. And with the Rochelle skill, she withstands Alpharad. Ryuga perfect guard and discards an Alpharad Phantom in his hand to guard his attack. He's now at 8 cards left in his hand, meaning he started out this turn with 10, which damn, this dude actually had some defense for the first time I've ever seen whenever you play this deck. Also, yes, that's correct. I can't find any fault with the Vanguard script in him having 10 cards in his hand, if you count everything I've talked about. She then reveals a PG and a heal trigger, which is just bad luck, I'm not gonna lie. Like, she's already at 5 damage. How do you heal against a guy who's almost dead? Anyways, Divine Skill, activate! She returns Francette, Armel, and Reseus to her hand. Using her skill, Armel gets called again, making it the same power and critical as Chris Reigns. How are you at 48k? Now, from the drop though, her Mythish calls with a counterblast, and with the Divine Skill, she can call this card from the drop. So let me get this straight. You're telling me Akina gets an anti-perfect guard every time he attacks 5 times a turn, and I can only call Uranus, this damn Mythish, once a fight from the drop? Are you kidding me? She attacks with Armel, who's at 48k and 2 criticals. Now, if you're meant to match Chris Reigns' power, where did she get the extra 10,000 power from? If I count Armel's skill, I only count like 38k. I'm confused, sorry. Like, maybe my math's wrong, maybe my understanding of Chris Reigns' skill is wrong. Sorry, I think someone needs to explain to me Chris Reigns' ability, because I thought you're supposed to match the same attack. How is this attack so high? He perfect guards again. Most likely, the card he added back from the top of the damage zone. Then, she attacks with her Mythish, and with its own effect, it gets a 15,000 power increase. So, Uranus is at 48,000 power, and of course, it's blocked by a 53k shield. She then returns Avladena to her hand from Chris Reigns Cadenza's skill, making her hand an astounding 11 cards. That's really, really good. Not to mention 1 perfect guard and a heal. That's some shield she's got. Ryuga has 3 cards in his hand. Wait a second. He had 10 cards, he used 2 PGs, so he's down 4, so he has 6 left. He then uses 3 to block the 48k power attack at 13,000 power for the Vanguard. So he had 3 triggers, like 2 criticals or heals and then 1 draw trigger. Damn, nice. Yeah, I was just making fun of that. It's definitely possible. Unlikely, but it's possible. Anyways, it's Ryuga's turn, and the final turn of the game. He personalized Alpharad Phantom. He then uses Crimson Moonlight from his hand to call Heat Stamping from the top 5 cards in his deck. He then calls another Heat Stamping and a Latifa, and a Mallory from his hand. I'm not sure why he didn't use Latifa's skill. He's got 2 Soul Blasts left. I think he can call from the top 5 again, but meh, I digress. Alpharad's skill lets him add 15,000 power, and he retires Uranus. With the effect of the non-boosted Heat Stamping, he attacks Armel. This attack is 20,000 power because of the Persona Ride. Holy crap, this rear guard's attack sucks. Then he attacks with Alpharad Phantom, and with the 2 Heat Stamping skill putting them into the soul, Alpharad gets another 20,000 power. Now here it comes, the Phantom skill. He binds 4 Crimson Moonlights at the same time, and it gets 10,000 power, 2 criticals, an extra Chive, and now Mikoto can't perform a perfect guard. So much from 1 skill. Holy dude, the poor Empoleon players. How did you guys get power scaled? How is this Phantom skill so much more like power scaled, bruh? Oh, the poor Empoleon players. Alpharad is at 86,000 power and 3 criticals. He's got 3 drives. Makoto blocks with a 98,000 power shield. Now, for reference, you can see from the shield in this anime, which I believe is symbolism, she used 9 cards in her hand for this guard. She couldn't use any more because 2 of the cards in her hand were a PG she added from the drive check and a Chris Reigns she added from her Mythish skill. So this was literally a full strength guard. This was literally the only choice though, like literally. This one attack is ridiculous. 86,000 power is ridiculously insane. He then drive checks. First check, no trigger. Second check, a draw trigger. He adds the 10,000 power to his rear. He adds the Alpharad. What, does he think he's gonna get a 3rd drive check? Critical trigger, what the f? Makoto takes 3 damage. She gets a smiley Albina, a Chris Reigns Cadenza, and her Mythish. Now, was there anything she could have done to change this outcome? Maybe. If she rushed more at the start, I think Ryuga would have truly been screwed. Because from hindsight, we know Alpharad deck only retires once per turn. Now, was Ryuga lucky though to actually get those last 2 triggers? Do you know how many triggers he actually had left in his deck? Let's count back actually. He used 3 to guard the Mythish attack, 1 trigger from what he got from the draw trigger, and 1 critical at the start. So that means in his entire deck, he only used 5, meaning he actually had 11 including his over trigger. Now, yeah, that's a lot actually. Not to mention, he actually had way way too many non-units, including PGs in his hand, from which he was guarding with. Not to mention 2 Persona rides. So that means 11 cards in his deck, give or take 20 or so cards from the start, meaning that he had about an 11 out of 25 chance of getting 2 triggers. It's a guesstimate. Please don't get angry if I'm wrong. I'm not counting all of that. But that's not too bad, actually. And the draw trigger lowers that chance by like 10 out of 22. Like, I'm not sure. Once again, a complete guesstimate. Like, it's not a ridiculous chance. Okay, yeah, maybe he got a little bit lucky because I don't know if you guys noticed this, but if he didn't actually put everything into that Alpharad attack, he would have lost. Because even if he gave that extra crit and everything to his next guard, she would have either PG'd or just taken that attack and got into 5. He was either way screwed because she had a Persona right next turn. Like, literally, he had to get 2 triggers here or he would have lost the fight. Like, I think on average, Alpharad loses about 99% of the fights. I'm not gonna lie, this deck kind of sucks, man. But honestly, Makoto not knowing about the ridiculously powerful Phantom skill once it's fully charged was the main problem. She didn't know, and with some more knowledge, I feel like she would have, I don't know, maybe used Armel's skill more. Like, what? Why didn't you just call her Eureka? What are you doing? Okay, you know what? Yeah, this feels more like the writers forgetting that Armel had so many effects. But anyways, I digress. Was there some points where Ryuga made some blunders? Like that draw trigger that he randomly got? Okay, I guess that's not really a blunder, but did the writers give him a freebie? Yes. Did Makoto also make a lot of blunders? Way too many with that Armel. I'm so confused on that still. Honestly, between these two, I feel like they make much better idols and edgy rock band teens than they do card fighters. Like, damn. Small little thing, I'd like to thank Nuriman2558 for this wonderful comment talking about how if Mikoto had actually just not guarded the Latifa attack on turn 3 during Alpharad's first grade 3 turn, then she would have actually had more than enough guard to block the Alpharad attack. And even if he had given his critical trigger and the draw trigger that he got for the grade 3 attack with his Phantom skill, he could have still not gotten through a perfect guard. So in reality, Mikoto could have won this. Let's go, Chris Rain!